This semester, we studied literature examining courage and cowardice in the Colonial Encounter. The definition of courage was central to our discussions. We are about to watch interviews with a few Bard students who share their understanding of courage and stories of times they acted courageously. What is your definition of courage?
With courage, I think it can come in a wide variety of things. The way that I really like to focus on it is people usually tend to talk about big acts of courage within history with example civil rights movements and stuff like that. And yes, those acts in history are courageous, extremely courageous, but I like to look at it in a more personal and smaller way, just because not all of us are able to do something like that. Mm-hmm. I just think it's having an awareness of whatever fears or insecurities you might have, and almost just facing them and doing whatever you want to do anyway. You could just be walking down the street and you could be scared as hell as getting hit by a car, but you still cross the street anyway. I see that as courageous. So I think can be seen as just whatever fears or judgment that you might get for whatever you're going to do, whatever you think, whatever you say, mm-hmm. and still doing that and not being scared to do it. I think that's courageous in my eyes. That's how I would define it.
What's your definition of courage?
Well, this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but there was a line from actually the Princess Diaries that I really like to think about when it comes to courage, which is courage is not the absence not the absence of fear, but rather that something is more important than fear. So it's making a choice that whatever thing is going on that's stressful, scary, that you need to be brave for, you can be scared. It's of course fine to be scared, but you need to put aside that fear for the sake of whatever you're doing, for whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And then, if that's your definition of courage, how would you? Courage to me is, I think it's about allowing your moral compass or a sense of justice or anger with a certain issue to take over and kind of override the fear of taking action. Basically when there's your motivator is more powerful than the risk that you're taking, basically, and you take the risk anyway, in spite of the fear or insecurity you might be experiencing.
Yeah.
What does courage mean to you?
Probably doing something that you're scared of for some sort of betterment.
Do you mean betterment of the self or betterment of the community or society, or?
I think it could be for anything.
So what does courage mean to you?
I would say to me it's very similar to bravery. I think I would say those words are synonyms, but I also know that there are small differences between the two.
Mm-hmm. And then how about cowardice, on the flip side?
Yeah, cowardice is when you know those fears and those insecurities that you have, and you give into it. You don't do it. You're too scared to do it, or you let it get to you. And with courage, it was almost just whatever action you do, and I think cowardice goes with that lack of action that we talked about in class a couple times. Mm-hmm. That lack of action and just giving into whatever fear or whatever is going on in your mind, and being too scared, not brave enough, courageous enough.
You understand cowardice in relation to that?
It's in that same vein, I guess I would say that cowardice would be when you decide that fear is the most important thing, that you need to protect yourself which is obviously okay, but you need to protect yourself over the sake of whatever you're doing, whether that be another person, a place, or whatever. Yeah, I think that would be it.
So,
okay, going off of that, what is cowardice to you?
I would say that cowardice is basically the absence of action, inaction, giving into those insecurities and fears, choosing to look the other way or not stand up in particularly in like social justice issues, like choosing not to participate, and looking the other way, I guess.
Okay.
How do you understand cowardice?
Maybe like shying away from something just because you don't want to deal with maybe like the maturity that it takes to do something.
So, like, how do you understand cowardice?
Giving in to your anxieties and your nerves and sort of shying away from something that seems really big and frightening. I think I'm probably a more cowardly person than I am courageous.
To go and do it and giving in. That's how I would define cowardice.
And then, do you have a story of a time that you were courageous?
I'm gonna do one that not everyone's gonna talk about. I used to hate tomato, and then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna put tomato on my burger because I'm just gonna suck it up, see if I like it, and then I ended up liking it. I could have ruined my whole lunch right there, but I didn't. I made it better because I tried the tomato. So that's kind of how I was talking about earlier. It could be literally anything, like trying a new vegetable. I wrote about that. One of my favorites. Like, yeah, I put tomato on my burger, and now I eat tomato with all my sandwiches. That's my act of courage.
So then, do you have a story of a time that you were courageous that you could share with us?
Yes. When I was in high school, like I think it was either my 9th grade or 10th grade year, my little sister, she was cutting a bagel in the kitchen, and she sliced her hand open. And so it was a really stressful moment, and she already is like a very stressed out person and a lot of anxiety. And so we had to bandage up her hand really quickly and drive her to the hospital, and I was the person that was driving, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'm okay, we're driving to the hospital, everything's gonna be fine. My feelings and my fear do not matter in this moment. Making sure that she is okay is the most important thing. So, at least in that situation, it was very important for me to prioritize the other person and making sure that they were okay over myself. It was like the first situation that I was like the person that was like the adult in the situation. Like my parents weren't home, nobody was home. So it was kind of realizing that not only she like turned to me and was like, oh my God, and like just kind of like seeing the look on her face, and also realizing that like I was the older sibling in that moment. I was the person that had to take responsibility for what was gonna happen next, make the decisions, and kind of like run us forward in that situation. Just kind of like kicked into gear, especially because I'm not that much of a leader type person. So it was a very interesting moment where I had to take the leadership position and kind of just make the choices.
How has that moment like shaped your understanding of courage, like going forward?
So that it definitely changed the way that I kind of see myself as like a leader, I guess, definitely, because like before that I was like the older sibling in name only. I was kind of like, I'm the older sibling, but I really wasn't that kind of like responsible person. And so after that, it was just kind of the situation where I kind of realized that it's important to take responsibility in moments and be able to have that kind of just be able to be responsible when you need to be. You know, you can't just kind of like sit on the sidelines forever. And there will be moments where you're given a call to action, I guess you could say, and you just have to step up and do that. And yeah, I guess I would say I'm a little bit more responsible, and we also bought like a big old guillotine, so that will never happen again.
Do you have a story of a time you were courageous?
Yeah. I worked for a company that basically they contracted lifeguards to different pools, and the way that they made sure that everything was running well and running safely was by auditing us, which included I think it was bi-weekly or monthly continuing education. Basically, we do training exercises on CPR and different save techniques. But another part of that was the live audit, which was basically when the corporate office would come to the pool basically undercover, and then they would have somebody in the pool pretend to drown. So basically they would observe kind of from the sidelines as they have you have this kid drown, as soon, they start it, and then they're watching you immediately. Like, what do? Like, you stand up, you blow the whistle, like how quickly it takes you to get to the kid, whether or not you're following protocol correctly. So then one afternoon, my pool got audited, and this was, I think it was at a country club. So it was pretty crowded. It was pretty full there were a lot of young kids. There were probably about 80 or 90 people in the water at this point. So it was pretty crowded because this was like a hot day in July. So then I noticed that this one kid is kind of floating weird and kicking in the deep end, and he's kind of floundering. It looks like he's struggling. So, I blow the whistle, I jump in the water, normal protocol. So I jump in to get this kid. I get to the kid, and I'm like, I'm a lifeguard, I'm here to help, like, as I'm supposed to. I get up to this kid, and he's like, oh, I'm not drowning. And then I look down, and then there's a kid, like, right below him who actually was drowning. So then I pulled that kid out of the pool. He was totally fine. I didn't have to do CPR or anything. He just got tired, so we set him up with a towel and a cup of water. But yeah, it was very interesting in terms of the coincidental timing of that. That I got live audited. There's a kid like pretending to drown, and then there was a kid right below him actually drowning. Do you have a story of a time that like you were courageous?
Okay. So this is the story of me getting rejected. And it's really only something that I'm like, what? That was kind of courageous, like in hindsight, because I really don't like sharing how I feel, and especially not if I like someone. Like I will not, but I had been friends with this person for a while, and I was very sure that they liked me back, and that was the only reason that I told them. And plus, this person, like, I didn't like fear judgment from them because they are just not like a judgmental person. So there came a point where I was like, I'm just gonna tell them because they obviously like me back. Plot twist, they did not like me back. And I remember we were like laying in the grass and we were looking up at the stars, and I was like, I have a crush on you. And they were like, okay. They said, are you serious? And I said, yeah. And then at that point I was like, oh my fucking god, this person does not like me back. This is really embarrassing. And I remember going home, crying all the way home, by the way, and writing in my diary over and over and over again, this is so embarrassing, this is so embarrassing, this is so embarrassing. But in hindsight, I say that is courageous because I have never told anyone I like them like that. And that was like a vulnerability, a step, like an emotionally vulnerable moment that I probably wouldn't have otherwise had I not been courageous.
General.
I mean, I cried, definitely, therapy. But the person and I are still like really good friends. We're really close. And that's another thing for me. Like, not to air out all of my dirty laundry on this interview, but I tend to do this thing when I am fond of people and they do not reciprocate, then I sometimes am like, okay, fuck this person. Like, I'm never gonna speak to them again. They don't deserve to have any of me if they don't want me in that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, we had plans to go see like a performance before I told them, and it was like the next day. And I remember just being like, I really like being this person's friend, and I think we'll be fine friends, and I think I can get over this. And that's what happened. We're still very good friends.
So do you have a story of a time that you were courageous?
I moved here from home, which is very far away, and I was I was a bit nervous too, but I don't know if I was necessarily thinking that hard about it. I just sort of did it because a lot of my friends were going far away. I don't actually know if I felt particularly like I was doing something brave when I moved. It was just sort of the thing to do. But I think it did take a bit of courage to go off and be on my own for the first time, like without my parents. It was very quiet for most of my life. I think I hardly spoke in a lot of elementary school. In 9th grade, I really didn't speak all that much, and I think it took a while, but I sort of finally, sort of right at the end of high school, I felt sort of much more comfortable being myself and talking to people, just like doing things, and I think that took a lot of like little acts of courage over a period of a few years to get there.